5 Japanese resin clays, 9 tests, and one answer to the question I get every single week. Which one should I actually buy? These 5 clays are all made in Japan. They're all air dry, no oven, no kiln needed. But they are not the same. Not in how they feel, how they perform, or what they're best for. I ran each one through the same 9 tests, side by side, so you can see exactly where each clay wins and where it struggles. Let's get into it. Test 1, the field test, fresh out of the package. Is it smooth, sticky, dense, or soft? For Gray's jewelry line, I observed that the clay is very soft and smooth and reminds me a little bit of softened chewing gum. For Gray's lightweight, it is also very soft but has more of a foamy feel to it. It is slightly sticky, especially after you work it with your fingers. Aura Clay Resin Clay reminds me a little bit of soft mochi dough. It is denser than the previously mentioned clays, but it's still pliable and smooth. Sukerukun has a very rubbery, gummy texture that bounces back when you stretch it a bit. And for Cosmos, unfortunately, it's very sticky, but brittle. It's very strange. It's dense, brittle, and sticky, and the clay adheres very much to the skin of your fingertips. One thing I also picked up during this stage is the self-adhesion. I'm happy to report that all clays stick to each other very well as long as they're still moist. Test 2, the pigment test. I added one single dot of acrylic pink marker to each clay and folded it in until the color was completely even. What I'm checking is, does the pigment absorb smoothly or does it resist or streak? At the end, after the drying time is over, we will compare the color of the dried clay with fresh clay samples to see how much the color alters during the drying process, how much it darkens, or if it remains exactly the way it was when the clay was still fresh. I'm happy to report that all the clays worked very well with acrylic marker. There was not a problem getting it distributed evenly, and yeah, as you can see, all the clay samples end up looking homogeneous and pink. So that worked out very well. Test 3, the mold test. Same sakura flower mold for every clay. I applied a small amount of colorless cuticle oil first. A little release agent goes a long way with silicone molds and air dry clay. One exception, Aura Clay. I deliberately skipped the oil because I already know from working with it that it demolds cleanly in shallow molds like this one. And the result? Clean outlines, easy demolding, and visible textures. I had absolutely no issues demolding the other clays either. Both Gray's jewelry line and Gray's lightweight demolded fine. Sukerukun was awesome. The only problem I had was Cosmos. For some reason, it just kept on sticking to the mold even though I used the cuticle oil. It was slightly distorted. However, the texture was still visible. So this is why this one looks a little bit janky. Test 4, the one I was most curious about, the stretch test. I rolled each clay out to about 1 millimeter thin. Then I cut a small frilly circle, cut in half with scissors, and used a toothpick to stretch it even further, rolling across the surface to push it as thin as possible without tearing. Then I folded each piece accordion style, like a little ruffle, to see if it holds the shape, keeps the folds, and doesn't crack. This test tells you everything about petal work, ruffles, and thin sheet jewelry. For Gray's jewelry line, I had absolutely no issues. I didn't feel like it held the folds very well. I had some problems actually keeping them stick together, but the stretch test was fantastic. It stretched without tearing or breaking. Same goes for Gray's lightweight. However, I had even more struggle keeping the folds together and in the formation I intended it to be. As you can see from the footage, I struggled quite a bit. Aura Clay is my clear favorite in this test. It was very easy to keep the folds as I wanted them without them moving around and still readjusting if the folds were not exactly to my liking. That worked out very well. Sukerukun, it was a little bit of a struggle due to the fact that it has such a rubbery and gummy texture, and I felt like, you can see it in the rollout stretch test as well, I felt like it kept on bouncing back. You stretch it and then the clay contracts, and this made it a little bit hard to get it as thin as I wanted to. However, it held the folds quite well. For Cosmos, I struggled the most. It was quite okay stretching it out. However, once I started to gather the ruffles and the folds, I had the problem with the sticky fingers. The clay kept on sticking to my fingers, and then I had issues adhering it to itself, so it was a big old mess and everything stuck to everything, so this is why it felt quite disastrous. Test 5, the surface test. Fully dry now. How does each clay feel and look? Is it smooth, matte, glossy? Any stickiness left? Let's find out. Gray's jewelry line. It has a very hard and smooth plasticky feel. I see a sheen, it's almost like a satin shine finish. Definitely gives me a semi-translucent result. And I have to say it's very hard. It has almost no flex to it. Gray's lightweight. It is very rubbery. It's a foam clay with a rubbery feel, almost like a rubberized surface feel. And it's not fully matte, but it doesn't have a sheen per se. It's something in between. However, it is quite flexible. And one thing that I noticed is that for some reason, fingerprints are visible on the surface, which you can see when you turn the piece around, and it has a very slight transparency. Aura Clay Resin Clay has a smooth pebble-like feel to it. It's a little bit gritty. Maybe I can best describe it as a velvety smoothness. It is definitely less shiny than Gray's, however, not truly matte. There is a bit of a glow to the surface. And speaking of pebbles, it's definitely rock solid, hard like glass, zero flex, and it gives me a semi-transparent finish. Sukerukun. This is the only true translucent clay. It has a very rubbery feel, and it even has some kind of slight oiliness to it. You can see it on my working mat where it leaves oily spots behind. It reminds me a little bit of fresh silicone molds that leach oil for some reason. However, the translucency is excellent. It reminds me very much of frosted glass, and also the finished piece is incredibly flexible, especially in thin layers. Cosmos. It has a smooth yet plasticky feel. However, also I can observe a semi-transparency with no flex at all, meaning this dried piece is incredibly hard, but it has a similar satin shine to Gray's jewelry line, so there is a slight sheen to it. Test 6. Shrinkage. Every air-dried clay shrinks as it dries. This is very normal, it's part of the process. But how much, that matters a lot, especially if you're making matching pairs. To demonstrate how much shrinkage occurred during the past 24 hours, I took every single dried example and put it back into the silicone mold to demonstrate how much shrinkage has taken place. Overall, I can say that pretty much all clays shrunk by the same amount. It is difficult for me to say by how many percent, but I hope that the visuals demonstrate it. It's minimal shrinkage, I would say. It's not super dramatic. However, Sukerukun was the clay that has shrunken the most. This is very visible. Just keep this in mind. your clay will definitely not be halved. It's not going to be quartered. It's maybe a few millimeters less. Test 7. Color shift. That pink I mixed in at the start, does it stay true once the clay dries, or does it fade, deepen, or change? For jewelry work, this matters. You want to know what the fresh clay looks like and what you get when it's dried. Overall, I can say it doesn't matter which resin clay you use, the color will always come out a little bit deeper and darker than what the fresh clay looks like. It has to do with the evaporated color. From those 5 samples, I can say that the only clays that didn't come out the same were Sukerukun and the lightweight grace clay. The other 3 clays looked very, very similar. Test 8. Weight. For earrings, this is non-negotiable. Heavy earrings are very uncomfortable to wear. So I took every single sample and weighed it. And these are the numbers I got for each sakura flower. For the jewelry line, I measured 1.15 grams. For the lightweight, I had 0.57 grams. Aura Clay was the heaviest with 1.24 grams. Sukerukun was 0.87 grams. And Cosmos was 1.18 grams. Test 9. The water test. Not whether you can swim in these, you should never ever do that with air dry clay earrings, even if you coat them. However, it would be good to know how much wear and tear they can withstand, or let's say water splashes if you choose not to seal your air dry clay. So will it survive minimal humidity for a very brief period of time? And the test is very simple. I just spritzed every single sample with a little bit of water and then immediately touched it to find out if it dissolves, if the surface gets sticky, or how it changes, especially what does happen to the clay after I put it down to dry again. And I'm very pleased to report that every single clay survived this test without any further damage. However, I noticed that the Grace lightweight clay started to feel a little bit sticky once I touched the surface, so that made me a little bit nervous. Overall, they still look great, they are still in great shape, and I do stress the fact that air dry clay jewelry should absolutely be sealed with at least 2 coats of varnish or some type of UV resin. Make sure to protect the jewelry that you made every single time. So, which clay should you actually buy? Here's my honest answer. It really depends on what you're making and what the end result should be like. So, for example, if you want the lightest possible earrings, you should definitely look at the Grace lightweight. It came out as the very lightest during our weigh-in, and it still holds sharp detail. If you are looking for a clay that demolds very easily and holds its detail well, I can absolutely recommend the Aura Clay Resin Clay or the Grace jewelry line. I think both of these clays are excellent. They perform very, very well. If you need thin sheets, then you should have a look at also Aura Clay, and I would say second best was, in my opinion, the Grace jewelry line. They created beautiful petals, they hold the ruffles well, any type of folds and thin layers that you create are fantastic with these. If you want something special and something the other 4 clays truly cannot replicate, then I would suggest you have a look at the Sukerukun clay, because it does have a very unique jelly-like translucent, I would say bendable, rubbery, flexible, translucent finish. It's a very fun clay to play with. I have to say it was my first time today. I absolutely loved it. It's definitely becoming a staple in my own clay collection, and it's truly one of a kind. However, it's only meant for certain type of projects, which is totally okay. There is no single winner here. The right clay is the one that fits your project and your preferences. But I do want to mention one thing, especially if you're in Europe, or if you've been working with Fimo or Sculpey and you're curious what air dry resin clay can actually do for you. Aura Clay Resin Clay is the only clay in this video you can order right now without importing anything from Japan. No custom risks, no surprise tariffs. It ships directly from Germany to every EU country. I made it available because I wanted people here to have a real option, real, authentic Japanese air dry clay. Something you can just order and try without any of the usual barriers. If that sounds like you, it's linked in the description below. Have a look. And one more thing, if you're completely new to clay jewelry, I've put together a free beginner's guide, a step-by-step tutorial for making your first pair of resin clay earrings. It's 100% free and it's linked in the description right below this video. If this helped you, a thumbs up goes a long way, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!